By 1700, the North American continent had attracted a variety of settlers. To the Chesapeake Bay area and the plantations of Virginia and Maryland came men in search of better economic conditions. To the wilderness of New England with its rocky coasts and sandy shores, Puritans seeking to escape religious persecution. To the forests and streams of Pennsylvania, idealists intent upon putting into practice their dreams of a better society. By the end of the 17th century, only 5 settlements had grown into cities, and the total number of American colonists was less than 300,000. The great influx of settlers would come with the 18th century, when tens of thousands of immigrants would arrive from Europe. What caused most people to risk their fortunes in matchbox ships and to endure months of disease, storm, and misery? Land. Rich, plentiful, and easy to obtain. It was land that brought them, and an opportunity to begin life anew. But the land took its toll in muscle and blood from the pioneers. Survival required a man of many skills, a carpenter, a farmer, and a hunter. The American pioneer was all this and more. In turn, he served as blacksmith, tanner, physician, and when need required, undertaker. Nor was the woman's work less varied. She was expected to bear and raise a large family. She spun thread for cloth from flax or wool, such as this woman in 18th century attire hangs out to dry at a restored pioneer village. She made soap, molded candles, churned butter, and baked bread. The preparation of meals took much of her time, for the hard farm work stimulated enormous appetites. Both husband and wife also had to be ever watchful protectors of the household, for the frontier lay open to Indian attack. Screams and shots from flintlocks like this one often pierced the night during the 1600s and 1700s. Outlying settlements fell victim to Indians angered by the encroachment of farms on their lands. Deerfield, Massachusetts suffered the attacks of warriors. They killed a group of farmers in 1675, and fear emptied the town for 7 years. In 1704, Indians attacked again, this time with the French, who were fighting the British for control of the continent. For half a century, hostility smoldered on British America's 1,000-mile frontier. During the French and Indian War, many a colonial militiaman fell in wilderness battles like this one near Lake George, New York. But in spite of the conflicts on the frontier, the period was one of expansion for the American colonies. Philadelphia, then as now a busy port, must have seemed like paradise to newly arriving Ulster Scots. Thousands of these Scottish people living in Ireland, plagued by a series of misfortunes and prompted by stories of New World opportunity, sailed for America. During the first half of the 18th century, the cobblestone streets of Philadelphia teemed with new immigrants. Some were attracted by William Penn's singular guarantee of religious freedom, for tolerance was a quality lacking in most of the colonies. Others were drawn by the ease with which they could acquire land, and the more who came, the farther inland others had to go to find a homestead. The Scots headed westward, past the ordered farms of the German-speaking folk, the so-called Pennsylvania Dutch. Today, their descendants still cultivate lush crops on farms their ancestors cleared and worked. Pioneers pushed westward until their settlements reached the mountains. Then they filtered south into new territory. In 1766, a group of Moravians, members of the Unity of Brethren, began clearing land for a town in North Carolina. They named it Salem, from the Hebrew word for peace. Today, around its town square, where these residents in 18th century costume sing by the light of candle and torch, stands an authentically restored village, a reminder of pioneer life. Travelers in the area stopped at the tavern, reputed to have an especially good kitchen. Here in 1791, President George Washington was entertained. For such a distinguished guest or other festive occasions, a pig would be roasted on a spit, like this one. The industrious brethren were known for their craftsmanship. Boys as young as 14 were apprenticed to learn a trade. They lived together in the single brother's house, where this cobbler taps wooden pegs into a shoe. Glass globes filled with water focus the light of a candle on his work. In the tobacco shop next door was born an industry which still thrives in the area. This artisan of Salem smokes a clay pipe made from an 18th century mold. Music was as much a part of Moravian life as religion and work. On his rounds, the night watchman blew a conch shell and sang a different verse for each hour. Another group of Americans enjoyed a very different existence. In the southern colonies, geography, climate, and time had evolved a plantation society, a world of large, self-sustaining farms. In Virginia, plantations such as George Washington's Mount Vernon lined rivers. Like Mount Vernon, they were principally supported by a single commodity, tobacco, the chief export and the currency of the area. Ships bound for England would load it at the planters' docks, then bring back European products, clothing, household goods, and wines. The Virginia and Maryland planters ordered the best. The South had already begun to build a reputation for hospitality and a gracious style of life. To the casual observer, the life of a great Virginia landholder like George Washington might seem pampered. His home was fashionable, with furniture made by a British craftsman. His conversation might center around works of British authors, for he was proud of his library, or it might concern British political philosophies. The colonial gentleman, like his peers back home, embraced the doctrine that man was endowed with natural right to life, liberty, and property. Despite numerous diversions and a cycle of entertaining, the planter's life was far from carefree. He was responsible for directing every detail of a large operation, for the plantation itself had to furnish almost every necessity of life: food, lumber, tools, and much of the clothing for his staff. Yet with all these responsibilities, the Virginia gentleman still found time to take a hand in the political life of his community. Sooner or later, this activity brought him here to the capital of Virginia, Williamsburg. This village, authentically restored today, harbors the spirit of men who came here to pass laws for the governor to approve. The Byrds and the Lees, the Washingtons and the Carters, all elected representatives to the colonial legislature. 2 centuries later, Williamsburg retains much of its original flavor. An 18th century visitor, like today's tourist, would have quickly found his way to the Duke of Gloucester Street, the town's main thoroughfare. Moving past Bruton Parish Church, one of the town's original buildings, and a gathering place for all classes of colonial society, the traveler would glimpse, at the end of a long green, where today sheep crop the grass, the governor's palace, residence and headquarters of the king's official deputy. On the right, the shop of George Wilson and Company, offering a choice cargo of the best sorts of English leather for all manner of men's shoes and pumps. And down the street, the octagonal brick magazine, where the colony stored its powder and firearms. On he'd go, past specialty shops and stately homes, until he came to an area of inns and taverns. In most towns, the tavern was the social heart of the community. More than just a lodging house, it was a place where a man could read his newspaper, dine with friends, or try his luck at cards or billiards. Guests whiled away evenings in the tavern, quaffing ale, smoking their pipes, and exchanging gossip. A lively political discussion might last through the night, and then the participants would crawl wearily off to bed, dreading the light of dawn already breaking. For the rest of the town, the morning died quickly, amid the noise of hammers shaping glowing iron, carts creaking along, and loudly struck bargains. For Williamsburg served as a marketplace as well as a political center, and windows of shops displayed, besides fine English goods, the products turned out by local craftsmen in the finest European tradition. A serving bowl fashioned of silver and polished to a bright finish. The beginnings of a graceful writing desk coaxed from cherry wood by a master cabinet maker. The merchants of Williamsburg supplied the needs of daily life as well. The apothecary served as both doctor and druggist. His shelves held a rich array of ointments, elixirs, and herbs, along with sets of well-honed instruments for amputating a limb and equipment for bleeding to treat a variety of illnesses. From the blacksmith's anvil and forge emerged a variety of hardware: door hinges, hose, nails, kettles, and ladles. At times, the blacksmith laid aside his tools in his apron and reported to the assembly grounds for training on muster day. Gentlemen and craftsmen alike practiced marksmanship, the manual of arms, and marching, as these citizens of Williamsburg drilled today. For law required that all able-bodied freemen of appropriate age and occupation be prepared to defend the town against any danger that might threaten it. On a day in 1775, when a group of armed patriots met here on Market Square in open defiance of the orders of the royal governor, Williamsburg would experience one of its glorious moments. Only a few years later, events would set the town on the road to obscurity. In 1780, the Virginia General Assembly, under Governor Thomas Jefferson, moved the capital to Richmond. But Williamsburg would live again, not just in its restored buildings and recreated atmosphere, but also in a spirit of responsibility born here during those golden years. The men who fostered that spirit would be called upon to defend their position during the American Revolution. Many did, to the death.